Pray. Amen. Please listen to the word of the Lord from the Hebrew Bible, Joshua 8:18 through 21, 25 through 27. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Stretch out the sword that is in your hand towards Ai, for I will give it into your hand." And Joshua stretched out the sword that was in his hand towards the city. As soon as he stretched out his hand, the troops in ambush rose quickly out of their place and rushed forward. They entered the city, took it, and at once set the city on fire. So when the men of Ai looked back, the smoke of the city was rising to the sky. They had no power to flee this way or that, for the people who fled to the wilderness turned back against the pursuers. When Joshua and all of Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city and the smoke of the city was rising, then they turned back and struck down the men of Ai. The total of those who fell that day, both men and women, was 12,000, all the people of Ai. For Joshua did not draw back his hand, with which he stretched out the sword, until he had utterly destroyed all of the inhabitants of Ai. Only the livestock and the spoil of the city Israel took as their booty, according to the word of the Lord that he had issued to Joshua. Then on to Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 through 45. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you or take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, also go the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you. Do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor, hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be the children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise and the evil on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous.
Our epistle reading today is from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verses 17 through the 13th chapter, verse 4. Listen for the word of the Lord. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there's no authority except from God, and those authorities that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Do you wish to have no fear of the authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive its approval. For it is God's servant for your good. But if you do what is wrong, you should be afraid, for the authority does not bear the sword in vain. It is the servant of God to execute wrath on the wrongdoer. This has been the word of the Lord.